So you're thinking about moving to the East Bay area of California. Well, I don't blame you. It's a great place to live and there's a lot to do here, but no place is perfect. So in this video, I'm going to tell you about 5 things I think you need to know about before you try to buy a home here in the East Bay area. I'm Bob Gibbs with the Gibbs Real Estate Group at Compass. We've been selling real estate in the East Bay area for well over 20 years, helping buyers and sellers live out their dream of East Bay living. I would recommend, if you're interested in the East Bay area, that you subscribe to this channel and hit the little bell so you get notified every time I put a new video out, as I'm doing it often. And if you're thinking about moving here to the East Bay, just give us a shout out. We'll do a great job for you and make sure you have the smooth transition into the East Bay lifestyle. So the first thing you need to be aware of, especially if you're coming from a different state or different country, is the high cost of living out here in the East Bay. And it's actually in the whole Bay Area, in fact, California in general. We have a lot of costs associated with living out here in the East Bay area. For instance, gas prices are typically $1 to $1.50 more per gallon. So if you're doing a lot of commuting, it's something you need to keep in mind. Property taxes here, while they're not high as a percentage, 1.1% per year, there also is bond issues and things that get attached, voters approved bonds for schools and other things that get attached to homeowners in the form of an increase in your property taxes. And so, for instance, if you bought a $2 million house out here in Danville, you're probably looking at $24,000 a year in property taxes that never go away. What's also high here is we have state income tax. So in California, the highest tax rate you're going to be in is around 13.3% roughly. And that's on top of your federal rate. So that's something to keep in mind if you're moving out here, just to make you aware of all the costs that are associated with living in here. While the schools are great, and a lot of school districts have very highly rated schools, in many cases they've been underfunded, or at least in terms of what the parents expect from the school. So a lot of times when you go to register your kids at school, you need to bring a debit card or a credit card because there's a lot of fees that people are going to ask you to pay. If they're playing sports or whatever, it's going to add up pretty quick. And then for a sales tax, it ranges out here, but you're looking at anywhere from 7 to 9% sales tax on top of the cost of the things that you're purchasing. So the cost of living out here is quite high. It's higher than anywhere else in the country, I think. And groceries, everything's on the high end. So you need to keep that in mind when you're moving out here to the East Bay or anywhere in the Bay Area, and for the most part, any of the highly populated areas of California. The next thing you need to be aware of is traffic. Now, traffic out here is, I think, a little crazy. If you're commuting from the East Bay area, let's just say you have a job in Silicon Valley and you need to be in the office every day or 3 or 4 days a week, you're looking at a pretty long commute with a lot of traffic getting there. And it can be an hour or more getting from like Dublin to Sunnyvale. And when there's no traffic, you're looking at 30-35 minutes, but in the commute, it's an hour and a half sometimes. And it's something you need to keep in mind. Also, public transportation is not the greatest here in California. We do have a BART, Bay Area Rapid Transit System, which is really good if you're going from the East Bay to like San Francisco, or you need to get to the Oakland or San Francisco airports. It's a great alternative to driving. However, if you're going from the East Bay area to the South Bay area, that's not there for you. So you're basically going to have to get in a car, or there are some corporations that have employee buses and they pick you up at some bus stops, which is actually a good alternative if you work for one of those companies. But anything short of that, you're going to be commuting, unless of course you work from home, then it's a great option to live out here. The next thing to be aware of is weather. You may think California, there's no weather problems here at all, and there really isn't a problem, but we have what's called microclimates. So I've seen 30 degree swings in temperature over the course of maybe 10 miles. So it's very dramatic. We have a lot, the topography out here is such that you have an area where you have fog that might be banked in, and you're looking at 50 to 60 degree weather. You drive 10 miles east and it might be, 90 degrees or more. I've seen situations where I've left Berkeley and it's 68 and I've gotten to Danville, it's 102. So just be aware of that. If you have a sensitivity to heat, you might want to stay closer to the marine layer, the Oakland, San Francisco, Hayward, that area where, in the summer, you're looking at high 70s to 80s. If you're okay with the heat, moving into the Tri-Valley area, which is, Dublin, San Ramon, Danville, all the way around to Antioch, Brentwood, those areas, you can get into, 105, 106 pretty easily during the summer months. So that's something to be aware of. When you say weather in California, people think it's just all beautiful. But remember what Mark Twain said, the coldest winter I ever spent was a summer in San Francisco. So the fourth thing to be aware about here in the East Bay is that we don't really have what I would consider a vibrant nightlife out here. I mean, there's plenty to do if you want to go out to eat or grab a glass of wine or go to a movie, something like that. But we don't have this scene, the nightlife scene that you would have in San Francisco, for instance. So, there's not a place you can go where there's a ton of bars. I mean, you can probably go into Oakland and find a couple places, but even Oakland, as big a city as it is, it doesn't have that vibrant nightlife that some people are looking for. So this is more of a slower suburb type living, a lot of outdoor activities that are mainly during the day. If you like to go wine tasting, there's things you can do there, or there's some brew pubs to go to, a lot of activities for kids and sports, things like that. But as far as a vibrant nightlife, that's not really out here. That would be more of a San Francisco area. In fact, even on the peninsula in the South Bay, short of San Jose, which does have some of that, San Francisco is about the only area that people really go to, have a night out on the town and maybe even spend the night. So East Bay is not for that really, but it's got a lot of other good things going for it. So the last thing, or the fifth thing that you need to be aware of is we are out in the suburbs out here. In many of the East Bay cities are up against the hillsides. So you're going to have a risk of animals coming into your property, especially if you're up against the hills. I know there's some areas here where, where I live in particular, you have turkeys, you have foxes, you have coyotes, you have skunks, you have possums, just a lot of different types of wildlife out here. Reptiles, there's some areas that have snakes, rattlesnakes, tarantulas, lizards. That may be a problem for some people. If you don't want to have any wildlife near you, there are some areas in the East Bay you can go to mitigate the risk of that, like in the cities of Oakland and places like that. But once you get out of that, you're more in the suburbs, and it's more hillsides and kind of outdoor living. So you're going to have the outdoor living with you. And that's something that's not everyone's aware of when you move out here. So you just have to be very selective in where you live and what you're used to and what you're comfortable with. And some people just don't care. I mean, they love the outdoors. They love being in nature, and this is a beautiful place for that. But if that's not where you're geared, you may want to look in a more heavily populated area. Thanks for watching.